Hello, and welcome back to the Pensive podcast. I'm Chloe, and I'm the host of this podcast. I am the founder and owner of Pensive. I'm a creative consultant, and I run creative workshops and do one-to-one creative consulting for all your creative needs. How many times can one person say creative? Today's podcast episode is on the topic of failure. And it's something that I've been considering personally recently. And I thought it would be an interesting topic to bring to the podcast to have a bit of discussion with myself today. I'm just here on my own. And I hope you've been enjoying our recent episodes. The second season has been really great. We've had some great guests, and I love doing this podcast. I love talking and sharing like ideas I've had. So I'm really excited to just keep it going, basically. I think I'll just dive right in then. I've been thinking about failure because I and a lot of my circle of peers, I guess, are kind of feeling at this point in our lives where we're just here and kind of stuck. And there's things that we want and things that we know we can do, but it just feels very like just ever so slightly out of reach. And we've gone through our 20s of the big hustle and like the big like fierce like I gotta get somewhere, I gotta grind. I have so much energy to do that, and I did that for a lot of my 20s. I was, running my own magazine and everything. And I would juggle that with like a full-time job with, just trying to have fun and go out and have the best time when I was living in Tokyo. And then I feel like now I'm only 30, like it's not it's not that far off from 25, but it kind of feels like it, to be honest. But me and my friends were just at this different point in our lives where, okay, yeah, we felt like we did all the hard work then, and we thought that we'd kind of reap the rewards, just not the entirety, not the whole cake, just a little slice of the cake. But it feels like even that bit of sliver is just the sliver of the cake, I mean, is just a, it's still, we still haven't taken a bite yet. It kind of just got me thinking, at what point do we consider where we are in our lives, where we want to be, where we need to be? What is it to us? How will we assess this in the future compared to how we're looking at it now? Like there's a lot of I don't know, it's a very tricky time, but also it just feels incredibly stagnant. Like I think that's the word that I'm kind of looking for, is stagnant. I don't want to make this like super personal or whatever, like that's not what I'm here for. But even for myself, I am feeling this kind of stagnancy of not being where I want to be personally. I don't feel like things are moving forward for me in my career as fast as I would like. There's just so many things that feel so far out of reach. And it does, when you keep having the same conversations with your friends about, I'm here and I'm doing this and I'm tired and I know what I need to do and I know what I want to do, and yet everything remains the same. And it feels like I'm a failure. It feels like I'm failing at life, to be dramatic about it. It feels like I'm failing. And so, we all gather around each other and we say, you're not failing. You're not failing. It's just, there's so many things outside of our control, which there are, completely. And we all rally around each other and it's the same conversation. And then we're like, yeah, we've got motivation again. We can keep going. We can keep galloping towards our dreams and fighting for what we want. And then 2 weeks later, you check in, you're like, how are you doing? You're like, well, I'm still here. And not to say 3 weeks is a time period in which you can turn your life around completely, but every 3 weeks, and then it's the next month, and then 3 months, and then 6 months, and it's still kind of floating. And at some point, it does really, really get to you, the feeling of, am I going to be in this floating state of my life forever. And we can certainly look to the past and say, well, no, because in my 20s, I was here, I was there, I was up, I was down, I was spinning around. And that was fun and energetic, and it felt like the beginning of something. And we've all been told kind of like, oh, 30s is like when everything, well, this is what I'm hearing anyway. Maybe I've been lied to, but 30s is when it like kind of all comes together. I'm still waiting. I think I'm still waiting. It's only been like 8 months of my 30s, so there's still time. But I think after all like the head rush of the previous decade, you really just want things to you just feel like for once, can something just be easy and go my way, please? That feeling is kind of exacerbated by people around you, and everyone's at different stages of their life. But we all hear it, that the societal markers of where we should be and what we should be doing at certain points of our life. Is it Jane Austen? Like, I'm 27 and I'm a burden to my family. Like, and it's a joke. And then it stops being a joke, the older you get. It very much feels like right now, and it's not just me, and it's kind of, I don't know, like a feeling of people like my peers, I would say. There's just kind of this treading water feeling. The reason why I wanted to talk about failure is just in the context of, yes, we can say like, okay, we're in the moment, we are not quite where we want to be, but that's okay. And you just keep at it, you keep treading that water. But at some point, you start drowning. You start drowning and like glugging like under the water, like, oh my God. And that's where the feeling, and I want to emphasize, it's a feeling of failure. That's when that feeling really kicks in. So I want to backtrack a little, actually, because there is a super famous podcast called How to Fail. And this is not to ride on their coattails. This is not to ride on Elizabeth Day's coattails, but it's more of just like an acknowledgement of that podcast as well. Because when I was kind of writing the notes for this, I remember I was like, oh yeah, like I used to really, really religiously listen to How to Fail. And it was when I was in Japan, and it was when like turbulent 20s, like let's go. And I used to listen to it like every week because I thought, these people that like they're so cool and successful, and they've done something with their lives, and if I just listen, then it can just give me hope to just keep going for another week. And that's sometimes like that's how I find that I motivate myself. It's usually like through others' words. So thank you to Elizabeth Day for your podcast. It actually genuinely really helped me to just keep going with my life and not to just completely give up on my hopes and dreams and wishes and whatever. Honestly, listening to other people and really what they consider to be their failure, or failures, plural, it just made me feel a lot less alone. It made me feel like all this kind of strife that I'm experiencing, it's not just me. And it's not to say that it ever will just be me. Like, there are no unique experiences, but sometimes you really truly just have to hear that the things that you're going through, yes, they're unique to you in the sense that it's a very particular context, but the overall, I don't know, feeling of what you're feeling, of like internal struggle and external lack of control and all these kinds of things, it's not a unique experience. And so when you listen to these like people who are very successful in whatever field, or not even in their career, and whatever they consider to be success, and then when you hear about their failures, you can see the trajectory. You can see when the seed was planted and how the flower bloomed later on into what became a success. I think it's really important to learn from your failures, but also sit with them as well. A question that I asked myself recently when I was going through the mental motions of what is my life? One of those moments. I asked myself, if I had the chance to start over from the beginning, like my entire life, my entire existence, knowing what I know now, would I do anything differently? And immediately my answer to myself, my gut instinct was no. Despite everything, despite knowing like all the messy things that I've done and all the things that I could have done differently, I wouldn't. And I don't know if it's because, it's that like, oh, I learned so much because of it. Maybe, probably, because I don't know, even if I knew at that point, okay, I know it's going to turn out this way. Should I do something differently? Well, no, because it took me to the next step of, oh, that turned out differently than I expected. And oh, well, I did something different and I learned something different and I met someone different. And I don't know. It's one of those things I can't explain, but I really considered, what would I do if I could reverse and undo all of my failures? I wouldn't. I simply wouldn't. And the next thought was, okay, so I'm walking down this road. I've redone my life. I've done all the same things for whatever reason. And it's led me to exactly this moment, this point here. So the only choice I have is to just keep going. The fact that I really readily accepted I would just end up in the same stuck place. So in reality, I can't rewind and I can't undo anything. So this is really all I've got. So I have no choice but to use what I've got from the past, all my experiences, everything I've learned, and just keep moving forward in a way that only I know I can. And I think that's kind of the most valuable thing for me that I've learned from failure, is that despite everything, despite the lessons and lows and stagnancy, and there's something necessary about not succeeding and not being right all the time. Even if it gets you to somewhere like you don't want to be, but you also have to remember that there are successes in there as well. Like your life isn't just one big, oh no, like big trajectory of failure. Like there's been some wins along the way. Like my life there's been wins along the way, but here we're focusing on the failures of it. So now I'm in this place where I feel stuck, but I know from past experience, I have felt this before. And honestly, I felt this before times 1,000,000 because sometimes like everything is overwhelming and whatever. And so I just have to remind myself like this can only get better, and this period of adjustment in my life, it will adjust, accordingly, whether that's for the better or slightly worse or much better. I don't know at this point. But I think the first step is just recognizing that, okay, my life has just kind of been flatlined for a while. And it feels not great. It does feel like I'm failing. But now that I've recognized it, I can do something about it. Kind of the position I'm in now is that now I've recognized, okay, feel like I'm failing at life. I feel like a failure. I feel like, oh God, like what's going on? I've been able to recognize these moments faster. I've been able to recognize my failures and where I'm heading in a pit of failure faster, which means I'm speed running my failures. So it kind of, if you visualize it, if you have like a toddler that's just like starting to learn to walk and they just kind of, they're up and then they fall over and they're up and then they fall over and they're up and then that's kind of how I've been speed running my my life. Just, just like falling flat on my face repeatedly and quickly over a very short period of time. But each time I've just been getting back up, not wallowing so much in the mud of it because you can't, you can't stay there for long. You'll suffocate in the mud. Are we enjoying my metaphors? We're enjoying my analogies. I never know what the difference between it. I throw these words out like metaphor and analogy. I cannot remember for the life of me what they mean. There's a meaning to the meaning. I can't remember. Never mind. But we understand. I think right now I'm in the position of giving advice to my friends, but also being in the same position myself, where I'm not gonna like throw myself under the bus or get too personal or whatever. I joke about it, but if I wrote down like some attributes about my life, I'd be a walking red flag to like most people. But people that know me know that that's actually generally not the case. It's just on paper. It's like, wow, like what's happening here? But I think, and this is why I kind of want to start reframing failure and what we can learn. I got to do my spin on it, of course. I I've learned to not live by my credentials. So what I mean to say is that the credentials is I have this attribute, or like I have a degree, or I'm earning this much, or I have this job and I'm with this person and that makes me have this status in life, that kind of thing. I think we get really wrapped up in it, and I get wrapped up in it. I'm like everybody else. Am I special and unique? I feel like we're all just wrapped up in labels, credential, and it's because it's easier to fill your ego that way, to say, well, I'm doing well, I'm successful because of XYZ, pen to paper, I look good on paper. But when we know our friends truly and deeply and honestly, those kind of things don't come into play. And so, if you're talking to your friend and they say, I'm a failure, your immediate reaction is going to be, well, no, you're not. I don't see you like that because you're this kind of person and you're kind and charming and caring and generous. And you bought me a donut last week. That doesn't make you a failure. You're just in your outer world, in what you perceive as success, it's not matching up, but it doesn't make you a failure. So I think it's a great way to kind of reframe yourself and where you're at with your life if you just take away the labels and credentials and just embrace being a walking red flag. Just take it all in. When we kind of strip that all away and we remove the idea of success versus failure, which is quite black and white, you are who you are without all these attachments. And as soon as you express, I am a failure, you're going to start attaching these negative beliefs to yourself and what you've done up to this point. You're going to start diminish these accomplishments. Don't forget the small things. Don't diminish the small things. Don't take away the feelings of joy that something brought to you just because it's not loud and big and splashy. And the small things in life are really like they're cumulative and they keep us going and they make us feel joyful. And I also fall into this trap a lot where I forget the day-to-day joys and the day-to-day achievements and successes. And I decide to look at the larger societal picture of where I should be at 30. Because that's the other thing. You look at your age and You're like, okay, I associate this number with this pattern of behavior and this pattern of progress in my life, wherever you live, and in dependent on your cultural background or your like familial expectations, like these things could all be different. So me saying I'm a failure because I can't drive. Okay, I can't drive. Let's put it out there. I can't drive. I don't want to drive. I don't like cars. I got in one at 17. I failed my driver's test like 5 times. I don't want to drive. Eventually I will have to. Anyway, that's one of my failures. I can't drive. So some people would look at that and be like, you live in London. What does it matter? There's the tube, the bus, Uber. Like, you don't need to drive. But for some people, like, oh, driving is independence. Driving is freedom. Driving is getting from A to B. Like, what are you going to do in an emergency? You know, so even the small things, like being able to drive, it all depends on what you consider to be important or failure or success. Obviously, like being able to drive. I'm just using this as an example, like a very silly thing. Like, you know, I don't consider me failing, like genuinely failing, like against an exam type failing, like something you can record. I don't consider that a failure of my life at all. I consider that just something that happened in the past. Also, I was a teenager. I was 17. What 17-year-old should be behind the wheel? This is what we should be considering as a nation. Because in other countries, like the age of driving is different, isn't it? UK, you need to look at yourself. Okay, all those teenagers driving their little Ford Fiestas or Minis or whatever the kids are driving. Take the license away. Take it away. So yeah, that's how I reframe failure. I think this idea of failing is kind of, I'm not going to say trendy and cool because it's not trendy and cool, but it definitely is being spoken about a lot differently. A lot of the emphasis is like failure is there to like, it's not failing, it's a life lesson. And yeah, I agree with that to an extent. And yeah, I do think that my failures have taught me a lot. That's without a doubt. But I also want to be careful with this because it does kind of feed into like the hustle grindy thing of like, okay, you've learned this, now take a lesson and go do something with it, which is very, very positive. But also, I don't know, there's a layer of something behind it that I can't quite express. I need to find the words. I need to be able to express it. That's the point of this. The idea that every failure has to be a lesson, and every time we fail, we have to learn, and every time we learn, we have to do. And I think it's the last part. It's the last part of having to just, you take something and you run with it every time, because sometimes the failure is not telling us to do something. Sometimes the failure is telling us to do nothing. I've learned that sometimes the best way to move forward is to stand still, which is a great lesson to myself because I've just been talking about this feeling of stagnancy. So maybe that's what I'm doing. I'm standing still. But truly, sometimes the best action we can take is to stand still and just observe like what is happening in our surroundings. Then you start thinking, and thinking is a great thing. Okay, there's the immediate impact of, oh God, this didn't work. I failed. I really tried. I gave it my all and it failed. And so you have the, okay, how can I fix it kind of feeling? And that's when you kind of embark on the doing, which is great. Doing is good, pushes you forward. makes you do things. Doing is doing. But also, sometimes we need to just stop and think, do I need to push this forward? Do I need to actually continue with this? Maybe the failure is just telling us like, it's not going to work out. And I think that's really hard to hear in a lot of cases. It's very difficult to think that something you put your heart and soul into, that you really planned and put a lot into, and it's not going to work. And I think that's heartbreaking. And that could be the lesson, that this time, this thing, it's just not happening. You could say it's not going to happen yet. Yet. And that's it. Honestly, it's dependent on your circumstance. That it could be it's not happening for the time being, or it needs a slight tweak or of something. But you won't know that unless you just take a step back, take a breath, and think, why did I fail? Why am I feeling this sense of failure? It could just be that I launched a new product and it didn't sell out immediately. I only sold 50% of it and managed to break even. You broke even. You broke even. That's amazing. You know how hard it is to sell things, to get people to buy it when you've done all the marketing and the social media and you launched the website and people were like, oh my God, and 50% and you broke even. It's like, wow, that's great. But you won't consider it that because you wanted it to sell out and you consider that a failure. So it's about just taking that step back and saying, but my product, people want it because they bought it. Doesn't matter if it's my neighbor and my mom. Doesn't matter. They still want to support you. And the other 50 people that bought it that don't know you, they also want something that you're offering. And isn't that wonderful? Isn't that great? That's not a failure. I think failures are there to really teach us things, and it's what we want to take away from them. I mean, there's so many like different lessons that you can learn. And the other thing is time really allows you to take that step back away from the immediacy of the feeling of heartbreak and failure. Because what you can observe in the moment, you're too close to it, like emotionally. So you'll never see the big picture until a week or a month or 10 years down the road. And you think, that's what that was. That's what needed to happen. Well, that's what happened, unfortunately. And this is how I moved on from it. And this is what I did instead. Whether we like it or not, we have to keep progressing through life. And there will be setbacks and there will be things that don't work out in our favor that we can't control. So it's more of a case of, okay, how do I deal with that? How do I deal with that mentally? How do I deal with that financially? How do I deal with that emotionally? This is what we can learn from failing. For me, some of my greatest learnings up to this point have been the result of big, big, big failure. Like, because I'm the kind of person that just, if I set my mind on something, I want it to go to the top. I want it to be the best, you know? I set really, really high expectations for myself, and I put a lot of pressure on myself for things to succeed. And I will, if I feel like I've got this idea and no one else believes in it apart from me, you'll bet I'll just keep going with it till the end of time until I feel like it's run its course, because only I can decide when that thing is not valuable anymore. But it just means that because I hang on to things for so long, ideas or businesses or people or whatever, and run it into the ground, if it's not good for me, I don't let go, it means I will inevitably come up against some serious beatings, like life beatings and failures. I've had to learn just to accept that that's my personality. And so be it. If that's how I'm going to learn, I'll just take it the hard way, because that's just what I'm like. I'm willing to fall down 70 times to just get back up the one time. Is it sensible? No. I've never been one to take the sensible path in anything. Anything. And I had to be reminded of that recently, actually. Because I don't know why I've been trying to be super sensible recently. And I talked about this. I did a little article on the Pensive Substack, which you should totally check out, by the way. Uh, just a side note. But I talked about doing the silly thing, because a lot of my choices in my life have been the silly thing. Like the thing that people would think like, what are you doing? Why is she doing that? I don't always get my own way, no matter how hard I try. I don't always get my own way. But that's the risk that I'm willing to take every time. You'll never know unless you try. And this is also something that I've learned in the context of, doing the silly thing and not taking the sensible path. And there's a book that I read recently that it's called The Tools by Phil Stutz. Phil Stultz. Sorry, I forget the author's name. He was the one in the Netflix documentary with Jonah Hill, the psychotherapist. Not Jonah Hill. Jonah Hill's not a psychotherapist. He's an actor. Phil Stutz. Anyway, in essence, and like it sounds so obvious saying it, it's like you have to go outside of your comfort zone to be able to bring in new opportunities. Otherwise, you're just in this swirling spiral of stagnancy, just treading water, stuck in the mud. So by me trying something new, being stubborn, doing the silly thing, the thing that makes no sense to anyone else, I've repeatedly pushed myself into a zone of risk. The risk, I think this is where it gets weird, because I was going to say the risk doesn't always pay off, but I think it's more so the risk doesn't always pay off in the way that I expect it to. The risk always takes me to somewhere that is somewhere new. And I think that's the reward. The risk gives you opportunity. And the opportunity will result in forward progress or failure depending on how you approach it. So much to the frustration of people around me when I've decided to do the weird thing. But I think they also know that I will never, ever, ever do the sensible thing consistently, because it's not who I am. But it's got me to exactly where I need to be. And the other thing is learning and, progress isn't linear. So even when I did decide to take my own path and embark on these risks, there's a lot of things that I did that I really thought like, oh, this is what I'm meant to be doing for the rest of my life. And I've just turned around, a few years later and said, I'm done with that, actually. I don't want to do that anymore. And everyone's like, what? You worked so hard. You based your entire degree off these things. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do it anymore. Is that a failure to... Okay, I'll be very specific. So I did a Japanese degree. My BA is in Japanese. And then my MA is in fashion. And, I was so involved in fashion for so long, and I worked so hard especially like, in the Japanese fashion scene. I work so hard to make myself known and make my magazine like a big deal. Even there's aspects to that whenever I talk about the magazine, I'm like, yeah, it's not whatever. And everyone's like, what are you talking about? Like everyone knew your magazine. Like it was such a big deal. And I was like, no, it wasn't. Like no one cared. Now come to like really appreciate like what I achieved with my team, because it wasn't this like the way that I thought it would succeed. It doesn't make it a failure. So now that I've decided to move completely away from fashion and kind of like Japanese culture in terms of like my career, a lot of people see that as very strange. I don't know, because fashion for me, this is kind of a tangent, but I'll bring it back to failure. Fashion for me has become deeply like, I don't want to showcase it anymore. I feel like, I don't know, the fashion industry, the fashion community has moved on in a way that I am just not willing to catch up in. I just, it's a treadmill that I got off. I don't want to do that. But it does mean that a lot of my past achievements, like on paper, my credentials, very much like to do with fashion and Japanese culture and Japanese subculture and fashion, etc. Now that I've just decided that I don't want to do that, I was thinking like, why did I invest so much time into that? Like, why did I waste my time? Why can't I focus on one thing for more than a few like years and then I've got to move on? I don't see that as having failed. I don't see that the choices my 18-year-old self made in her degree choice for university and my 20-something-year-old self made for my MA, I don't see that as a failure, and I don't see my past overseeing a magazine as a failure just because I've decided to move on. That is very much still a part of me, because I talk about it on this podcast, I talk about it outside of the podcast, I talk about these things all the time. They're very much a part of my journey and my learning. And when it comes to what I'm doing now, which is like, mindfulness and productivity and creativity, it very much still factors into what I'm doing and my experiences and what I've learned. And there's so much I learned through that now factor into this. When I started Pensive, it didn't feel like I was at square one with starting something. It felt like I was bringing all of this past knowledge with me to start something I felt inspired to do, basically. And just because on the outside it looked like I was I was pivoting like a complete 180 from what I was doing, it never felt like I was doing the wrong thing and that I wasted my time. It felt like a natural progression. So if there's anyone feeling like they're starting over at whatever age, just know that you've got a wealth of knowledge behind you to back you. And I'm not talking specifically about like academic pursuits. That's specifically my thing. Whenever I get invested in something, I'm like, right, off to get a degree in it for whatever reason. I mean, all of your past experiences, they come with you at any given point in your life, and you can draw on them to help you in whatever you want to do. So even if you are at one point a high flying, very high earning lawyer or something, and then you think one day, I just don't I don't want that actually. I'm starting over at 42 to become a chef. It doesn't mean everything you did before doesn't count. It does. It absolutely does. You're not a failure. It doesn't mean that you took the wrong path at first. You went on this path with all the information you had at that point, all the inspiration, all the motivation, all everything. And that's why you did that. And now you want to do something else. And that's okay. That's perfectly fine. And I think it's something that is very, very difficult because we are told that progress is linear. Progress is never linear. Progress is like a little squiggle. Sometimes it's a spiral, sometimes it's a rhombus. Sometimes, what other shapes can I think of? Sometimes it's a cylinder, sometimes it's a square. Sometimes it's in the shape of a dot. You know the things where you have to do the dot 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 and it makes a picture at the end? That's what life is, and then the picture turns out to be a cake, you know? I think, and this may be controversial, but who knows? I think it's okay to feel like a failure. I think it's okay to feel like crap, honestly. I think it's okay. But at the same time, I don't think staying in that. I think that's, well, my advice with anything that feels negative. It's okay to it's perfectly okay. It's very natural, it's very normal to feel failure, to feel sad, to feel disappointment in yourself, but you don't have to stay there. And it's not to say that like you have to motivate yourself and feel inspired and like make it like super happy. Like sometimes you can't. Like sometimes you can't. Sometimes the only feeling you have is that feeling of deep disappointment within yourself that it didn't work out the way you want. That's fine. I think emotions are normal. I don't think I'm not one of these people to say that sadness is low vibration or whatever. I think that's weird. I think emotions are there as reactions to possibly negative experiences or like unwanted or unhelpful things in our lives. Like, if we walked around and we were happy about everything all the time and we were able to just get up and go and feel, yeah, oh, my business just crumbled. I'm in hundreds of millions of pounds of debt. Woohoo. Like, that's very not normal. Like, you can reframe it and be like, I took a risk or whatever. But, like, dude, let's be real. Like, that's a very scary situation to be in. And at that point, you will feel like a failure and you will feel like absolute crap and you will feel sad and you will feel like, oh my God, what's going on? I'm the kind of person that uses these emotions as fuel, basically. I think that sometimes when we are stuck down there and we feel like that, that's all we have. That's all you have is that feeling. And you think, I'm alone in this. I feel sad in this. Everyone else around me is not feeling this, whether that's true or not. That's probably how you feel. And it's how you use that feeling is what's going to get you out of it. My advice, and this is, I don't know if it's useful or not, is to stare into the void. It's to stare into that deep pit of despair and ask it, like, what is it? What do you want from me? Like, what can I take from you right now? You don't have to act on it immediately. You don't have to do anything. Sometimes you just take 20 minutes a day, 3 days, and you sit with that melancholy. You sit with that feeling of failure. You sit with it. You look at it deep in the darkness and you ask it what it wants and it will tell you what lesson you have to learn or what you have to do. And like I said before, you sometimes you don't have to do anything. Sometimes you just sit with that emotion and you sit with that feeling of failure. And sometimes you just accept that you messed up and you take some time to yourself. You pick yourself up because you have to eventually come out of the void. I'm not like, when I say stare into the void, I'm not talking about wallowing in your sadness and like feeding it. You're not feeding the fuel of melancholy and adding to it and, oh, woe is me and nothing will ever change and I'm so bad and wah. It's like, it's this deep, almost meditative state of calmness and kind of just accepting this dark emotion and just being with it for a while. And that's perfectly okay, just being in silence and doing nothing. And also, if that's difficult for you, to ask people around you to support you in any way they can. And that's different for everyone, whether that's talking about it, talking through it, just physical closeness, these kinds of things, whatever it is that you require in that moment to be with that emotion. And maybe if you're comfortable and you can ask for that, that's also a useful, very, very useful tool. Because at the end of the day, you're going to keep messing up. You're going to feel sad. You're going to feel like a failure. It's up to you, or like how you want to deal with it. And how I deal with it, how I deal with it is just, I think recently, the most powerful thing with all my failures is to be completely honest with myself. And that's been very difficult because sometimes you have to confront yourself with things that you wished were not true, but they are very true to your reality. Maybe, your actions were not good in that moment, or that's why you had this negative result of the failure. Maybe you made a mistake, but you didn't admit it at the time because you were too proud to admit it. And then it fueled further mistakes, and you didn't open your mouth at the earliest point and admitted that you were wrong. So it just kept getting worse, these kinds of things. And you can't change what you did in the past, but you can confront the present and the reality. And the best thing that I found, and but this is personal, to me, and it's just being completely honest about what happened and what you did, and completely just confronting yourself with that truth and making amends with that wherever you can. And that's sometimes the lesson that you learn from failures. And it's kind of also almost healing in a way to accept, just accept, what's the 7 stages of grief? The last one is acceptance. Somewhere around there. Just accept. And then it goes back. It just rolls back to grief again. I think the 7 stages, they don't actually progress. I cannot remember what the progression is, grief, anger, betrayal or something. But usually the ping pong, you go grief, acceptance, betrayal, anger, sadness. I don't know. I can't remember. But to directly confront those feelings, because sometimes when we talk about failure, it's not necessarily there's always the context of what happened. There's the thing that you can say, A plus B equals C. This happened and this happened, so this was the outcome, and the outcome was the failure, right? But within that, there's, I felt like this, and then this was happening in the background, and then this person over there was kind of influencing what this happened. And that it's always way more complicated than just, I missed the train, and then I missed the meeting, and then I lost the job. Maybe you woke up and you weren't feeling good because you went out the night before, and then you had an argument with your friend, and then you were overthinking it and then you went to bed late. There's all these different things happening at all times that we can't control. So in that case, maybe the confrontation you have with yourself is I had an argument with my friend, and I was actually wrong, and that's why I was overthinking it, and that's why I got up late and then missed the train and then missed the meeting and then I lost the job. But now I'm blaming my friend that I didn't get this job because they distracted me, and why did they pick that time to have a fight with me? But actually I was kind of wrong. Do you know what I mean? It's not simple. None of this is simple stuff. This is very complicated and complex learning. So in that kind of instance, the opportunity from that failure would be to make amends with your friend, to confront yourself about what you did, and to not redirect the blame on someone who was just an innocent bystander to your to you getting up late in the morning, you know? At the same time, while you do hold yourself accountable for your failures, you can have compassion for yourself, right? So let's go back to the argument with your friend situation and you didn't get the job. You were feeling nervous about the job and you really like they could have waited to have this specific talk with you, not the night before your interview. And so you like not only were you nervous and you had butterflies, but you really cared deeply about your friend. That's why you were up all night thinking about them. You're not the villain, they're not the villain in this story, but it did result in a not so great outcome. So what can we do with these kinds of failures, I suppose? It's about changing your viewpoint, it's about changing the parameters. It's about taking it on the chin and moving on. Because the takeaway from, I think, well, in this example that I'm using is not like, oh, the job wasn't meant to be because the failure didn't occur in the room. The failure occurred way before then. If we're talking about not this kind of instance, if we're talking about like failures, like the feeling of failure within yourself, I am a perfectionist and I know a lot of people hold themselves to high and almost impossible standards. It's easy to just say like, oh, it has to be this way, it has to be this way. But I think if you question why your standards are so high as well, because I learned that I kept feeling that I was failing myself because I have such high standards and I have to achieve this and I have to achieve this. And oh, if I don't, I'm a failure and what am I doing with my life? And if I really like dig down and think about it, I think I was holding these kind of standards for myself because then I could avoid doing the work. Like, then I could avoid not doing the work. I would do the work. I would do so much work and so much research and not put anything out. Like, so if, for example, like art projects or even this podcast, I wouldn't call it procrastination. Maybe it is. Okay, it's a form of procrastination, I guess, because it had to be perfect. It had to be exactly the way I envisioned it, exactly the way that I saw it going. And if I didn't have it looking how or sounding how I wanted perfectly, then I couldn't put it out because then it wouldn't be successful. I'm someone who gets bogged down in ideas. I love a good idea. I'm full of them. I'm full of ideas all the time, everywhere. Put me in a box. I have an idea to get out of the box. Like that's how I survive. But the flip side to that is like my ideas are so specific that when it comes to actually carrying it out, like only I can tell what is part of the idea. And sometimes reality does not match up with what's in your brain, no matter how hard you try. Sometimes it just doesn't, and so we have to compromise. And for me, compromise was maybe still is diluting my vision. But when you're starting a project, you have to start somewhere. It can't always be the 100% perfect end result like that you would want every time. So what I'm trying to say is by not reaching your goal immediately, it doesn't account for a failure. Like this podcast, I love doing it. It's something that I never imagined I could enjoy doing so much, even though I love talking. I often talk to myself. I leave a lot of voice memos on my phone that I listen back to just for myself about anything. Like I can talk about just random thoughts, like thoughts on cultural topics. I don't know. Does anyone else do that? Anyway, at this point in time, like I would love to have a bigger viewership. I would love to have a bigger audience. You talk to people and they're just like, just keep going, just keep going. Like you'll find your audience. etc. And like in my mind, I have a specific timeline. I'm like, by this day, I've got to have this many subscribers and this many listeners, and I've got to have this many, and I've got to do this. And the reality has not at all matched up to my vision in my noggin. You know, when I talk to people who do listen to the podcast, I really enjoy it. Thanks, guys. That's what they tell me anyway. They enjoy it, and I enjoy doing it. And isn't that the win? Isn't that what it's about? Is like the actual value that I'm creating by sharing my voice and hopefully inspiring other people and helping them to find a different viewpoint or find some kind of motivation for themselves or their work or whatever it is, you know, whatever you want to take away from what I'm saying. But, you know, my focus is like, oh my God, but only like 10 people listen to it. Oh my God, like what a flop, you know, and 2 of them were me probably. It doesn't make this a failure. It doesn't make me a failure. It doesn't make what I'm doing a failure. And that's something that I think is very hard to think about in a world where we are looking at metrics all the time, like YouTube analytics and Instagram insights and whatever's going on the clock app. Like there's so many metrics. I look at YouTube analytics and like I remember when I had a different YouTube channel like years and years ago, I was like, oh my God, I used to get really bogged down in analytics. Now I look at it, I'm like, whoa, nice. I refuse to understand them. I do understand, but I refuse to like look into it deeply because no amount of robot and line going up, down, down is gonna like take away my joy, you know? Like leave me alone. What I'm doing isn't like I'm not gonna let someone tell me that my thumbnail wasn't good enough. Like, so what? So what? I know what's coming out my mouth is of greater value than any flipping thumbnail. Like, I'm sorry, I don't know. I don't enjoy clickbait. Every time I like write a semi-clickbaity title with like a semi-clickbaity thumbnail, I'm like, ew, you know, this is gross. I don't want to do it. Like, just click on it, you know? Just, and then people don't click on it. So I don't do the clickbait thing. And then no one watches it. And I'm like, oh my God, like, what am I doing? You know, all the dramas. Screaming. But I made that choice to not do the clickbait and follow all the trends and everything. I made that choice. So I have to sit with that. I have to live with that. That's up to me. I can't put the blame on anyone. There's so much information out there about how to like get people to click on your flipping video, which I've just chosen to ignore because I'm like, I don't see the point. I don't see the value in me like looking like a maniac on a thumbnail. What I'm saying is I have to live with that. And if the result of that is that less people will be immediately engaged with what I'm doing because they don't find me. And so the metric goes down, right? The number drop, the number go down. I have to detach myself from the number. I have to find a way to be okay with that because I made the choice to not follow the trend, do the clickbait, whatever. Okay. So there has to be some kind of separation of what I value, what I've chosen to do, and knowing that if I do this, I won't see immediate quote unquote success. That's always going to be, at least in this case, the kind of choice that you have to make. Do I feel like a failure for like having a small audience on YouTube? No. Because, you know, like every time, honestly, I'm not kidding. Every time I get like one new subscriber on YouTube, like I punch the air. I punch the air. Because I'm like, I know that it wasn't my thumbnail or my title or like a trending topic that got that subscriber. It was what I said. it was like my voice, because I also on YouTube I also publish workshops, little helpful videos about productivity and mindfulness and that kind of thing. So they chose to follow me or subscribe to me because of what they like. They like what I said, and that is so much more fulfilling than anything else. That's how I'm kind of reframing this new journey I have with like social media. Before, when I was in Japan and stuff, I don't know what it is about Japan and like people posting pictures in Japan. It's like this is my life in London, but in Japan, whoa! I looked like this in Japan, but it was so much more interesting because I was in Japan. But now it's like very boring. I and a lot of people, like my friends, were all posting on Instagram, and we're very like aware that we were gaining popularity online because of our location, basically. Because we live in Tokyo and it's like cool or whatever. It's been a conversation with some of my friends who are like honestly scared to lose that attachment to Japan because it'll affect their online persona, their following and stuff. While you could say like that's such a superficial thing to care about. Why would you care about that? If you're expecting to maybe make a livelihood off of your social media following, which is very much a thing that people do now, or like build a brand or something, you would be scared. Also, there is that very much like people are liking what I'm doing, and what I'm posting and what I'm talk about, and it gives you that feeling of validation. It is very alarming when you see that number plummet because you don't fit in with other people's expectations, and suddenly the number drops and the engagement drops and everything just drops, and again that feeling of feeling like a failure starts to creep in. And I very much had that, like I had so many more followers on social media when I was in Japan. When I came back to the UK, it was one of those things where like I said before, I didn't want to participate actively in fashion, and I wasn't in Japan anymore, so that part of my like persona uh went to the wayside, and I just didn't want to post. I just didn't want to be online anymore. And yeah, sometimes when I did eventually like put things online, it was like, "Ooh, I have people like this," and then like that feeling of the metric, like your value as a person against this metric kind of crops up again. I simply do not care anymore. That would be an overstatement. I care somewhat. I care about what I'm gonna what that kind of world brings to me, and it's not my care doesn't lie in gaining 100,000 followers, because I've seen people do that for and gain that amount of following and exposure for anything. You can like you anyone can kind of do that, but it's really about like what you feel it's for. And it's if it's just for exposure and validation, and it's for exposure and validation, then that's what you use it for. But I think there is a tendency to just see other people being successful online and social media and content creation and say like, I want that. But then it's not attached to anything. And then you feel like a failure because you're like, why isn't my following growing? It's like, but what is it for? What are they following you for? Is it just you want people to follow you because there's a trending sound and you used it? Like there has to be something in that. So I think in this conversation around failure, like there's a sense of having to be grounded in yourself and what you want and what you're doing. Because I think if you have more of that, it's not to say that the feeling of failure will ever go away, but it won't affect you as much if you know who you are on the inside. That's definitely the case for external validation. In terms of the online world of social media, I think it's very much exacerbated the feeling of being a failure because you are confronted constantly with other people showcasing their work, their talent, their I don't know, what are people whatever people are putting online, their life, their whole life, there's always going to be that immediate point of comparison. It's important to understand that this is a showcase. Like when you go to a dog show like Crofts, they're bringing their best dogs and their best behavior. The thing that they've been training for. It's the same as social media. I don't know why I'm comparing it to Crofts, but it's that kind of, it's the key word is the showcase, right? That's where that came from. Even with those kind of like crying videos, like, oh, this is my lowest. Oh no, it's so sad. Like, I'm just going to be real online. It's still a showcase. Like, they chose to film it. They chose to post it. They chose the caption. They chose to say, like, look what I'm going through. It's so hard. I'm being vulnerable. It's a showcase of what they want you to see of themselves. So you can take away whatever you want from that, because the next part of that, like I'm going through something, I'm being emotional, I'm being vulnerable, etc. The next part will always be, look where I've gone. Look how I picked myself up. Look how I've reached the highest of the highs. Like, you can do it too. You've started with me at the bottom of this pit, and now look at me. I'm a successful actor or whatever it is. Like they want you to come on their journey of success. Don't feel like you're a failure because you're just experiencing people at different parts of their life, and they're experiencing you at different parts of your life. They don't know you. Maybe they do, but most of them don't know you and your character and your experiences and the people around you and your community. Like, it's really easy to flatten and give someone like a processed cheese sandwich of their life, like, this is my little Tesco meal deal, please accept it. The way that I kind of take these snippets of people's lives is creatively. I acknowledge the talent that I'm seeing for free. Like, you get to see like so many things, the wild abundance of talent like on display, rather than use it as a point of comparison to say, like, oh my God, like my little scribbles are really bad, because their little scribbles were probably bad. And also the stuff that they didn't show you, that didn't make it to the reel, is probably also quite bad, because 99 times out of 100, your art is bad. And then you make that one, and then you're like, I'm a genius. That's kind of how I stop myself from comparing all the time, like in this case, creatively, to other people. And you can just apply that to other aspects. I think the biggest one, the worst one, the most exploitative one, is people just like showcasing their lives and their families. I don't think kids should be online like at all. And then there's this kind of like idealized image of the perfect family, and then you get like, me as a 30-year-old, like, should I have kids? Like, no, what am I doing? I can barely look after myself. Like, where is thought coming from? So there's all of that going on, and stacking up this feeling of falling behind. You can never be falling behind in your life. There's no one way to live life. I really just have to be, and I think we all have to be very aware of the ever-present danger of comparison. There's that the saying, comparison is the thief of joy, and a partner to failure, like the feeling of failure. If you are feeling more active, in the sense that while you're looking at these people's lives and achievements and creativity, and feeling like a complete failure for not emulating them and their success, what you could do is thinking, well, now I've got to get to work. I've seen what can be achieved and what's possible, and I can do that. I love that one. I can do that. If they can do that, I can do that. They had to start somewhere. I'm going to start where they started. I can take this free tutorial on YouTube and start my little scribble, and who knows where it's going to lead me. And one of the best things that I've taught myself recently, and something that I keep going back to when I feel like I'm not going anywhere and I'm stuck and I'm just freaking out, is okay, well, what can I do in this moment? And I've said this before. What can I do in this moment right now with what I've got in front of me, in front of my eyes and next to my hands? What can I do that's going to help me, that's going to make me progress? So when it comes to like art stuff, I'm always thinking like, oh, I don't have the right paints or the right paper and the right brushes. Like like literally I don't have any of that. But what do I have with me that I can use right now? And as soon as I started actually like doing things proactively, I learned, like, because practicing is learning, first of all, but I learned that I could just, I have the capabilities of doing things that I didn't think I could do. So it really lessened that feeling of failure. First, I stared into the void. I was sad. I was like, oh my God. And then I thought, right, enough void. You've seen enough of me. I'm going to get out. Like, it's time. The other thing that I've been doing in terms of my art and artistry is treating my art as experimentation and calling them experiments rather than art, because I have these lofty ideas of art and high art and what it's supposed to look like and all the outcomes and everything. And I think by just changing the wording of it, it's removed a lot of the expectations that I set for myself. It's still the same thing. I'm still making little scribbles on pieces of paper. But by calling them experiments, I think what I kind of like in my mind, I think, okay, the pen is an ingredient, the paper is an ingredient. When you put them together, it has how you say, a little outcome of a little, I don't know, je ne sais quoi. You know, like, it doesn't have to be art necessarily. It could be like a new process. Like, you're just learning, you're just experimenting, you're just trying. And when you try, you can't fail because you're just trying, right? Failing means you tried something in the first place. Failing means you went out of your way, you got out of your comfort zone, and you tried. And that's all you can ask for. So failing in that context isn't negative because it's like, well, at least I tried. Some people don't even take the first step. At least you you took the first step and you were like, right, okay, let's go, which is actually a success. If you think about it, it's genuinely a success. And if you do this repeatedly, if you keep trying, failing, trying, failing, trying, failing, what you're doing is expanding the limits of your comfort zone. Because initially you're going to start very small. It's like a tiny, tiny little circle. But the more you try, you're like pushing against the outer limits of what you think is achievable, what you think is possible. And you're just gonna keep fighting it, and you're just gonna keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And pushing, eventually you're just gonna crack open, crack, crack. You're gonna crack. Like me, I'm just gonna crack. You're gonna crack it open and find something new. And newness leads to opportunities. And opportunities lead to more newness, new things. And opportunities is just where the secret sauce lies, isn't it? It's like it's all the possibilities. It's all the things like I never thought that could happen. Never thought that could happen for me. There's so much to be learned from failing over and over and over again, and trying over and over again, and pushing over and over again. And it just takes a certain courage and dedication to try. Like, just keep trying and keep failing, honestly. Keep failing. I think I've talked a lot about everything, really. I've just talked a lot. But I wanted to just pivot to maybe something a bit more inspirational, maybe something that you can do for yourself, maybe a mindset shift you can take on, of course, when you're feeling ready to actually do something. For me, like most of the time when I feel like I'm a failure or whatever, I take a moment to just realign, reassess, reframe. I love my re's, realign, reassess, reframe, and look at everything from a completely different perspective. Sometimes, yeah, it's acknowledging that I've gone off course and I've taken something as far as it can go. And now I need to change. I need to change tack. I need to change direction with it. I need to be more proactive. If you are feeling this kind of stagnancy, this kind of feeling of failure, you have now, you have the opportunity to do something about it for yourself. I'm the kind of person to say, like, look, this is all on me and I have to change everything about my life for myself and it's just me, woohoo. I wouldn't advise that all the time. I think, that you need to talk to people and lean on people and stuff. But in order to make great strides in your life towards where you need to be, it does kind of, well, yeah, it does need to come from you and your self motivation. What you can do first, I think, is to have a mindset shift. So, like I said before, the reassess, realign, reframe. So, take a step back from where you are. Like, look at your life. Like, really look at it. Be honest with yourself. I think slightly detach emotionally, maybe, because that's what's going to make you feel like, oh, I'm a failure. So, you need to just have that slight bit of detachment. Be very objective about what is working and what isn't working. Great time to make a list. Love a list. Great time to journal. Great time to whatever you do, whatever you can do to just pull yourself apart from your immediate like circumstances that you that you aren't necessarily like aligned with. So for me, that is a lot of it's journaling because it gets out all the crap of the stuck emotions, and then I can make a list or like a little mind map. Get yourself an A3 piece of paper, and pens, like colorful ones, and just do yourself a mind map. It really helps you to just put together all the dots, all the different parts of your life that you thought maybe aren't connected. There's parts of, like paths you wanted to go down and you think, well, I don't quite have the experience for that, or maybe it's too late and blah, blah, blah. But you can maybe start thinking like, oh, well, I did this a while ago and then it gave me this experience. So maybe I can follow this path in this way. And I think just use whatever tools you have, whether you're a visual thinker, so great mind map, or if you're more like me, like writing everything down, or talking. Talking is another way to just like really get clarity on your situation. If you're talking to someone, talk to someone you trust, talk to someone who, I mean, they don't have to have their life together, but it helps. But also just someone who's going to be very honest with you and also, emotionally mature, hopefully, and who can see you, who can see through the emotional fog that you're carrying and help you to get greater clarity on your actual situation. Yes, they can be there for you emotionally, but sometimes you do need someone to just be like, look, shut up. This is what you're good at. Like, genuinely, you need to acknowledge that you're good at this and you have skills and you have experience and you've done things and you've been here and then you can take that all in for yourself and hopefully acknowledge that you're not useless and actually not a failure, and then do something with it. So, all of these like tools, they work really great in combination. Like you start with the friend and then you like write it all down and then you do a mind map. And then 3 days later, you're like, oh my God, like I've got it. Like I can do things. There's always, I believe truly, like there's always ways through. There's always like ways about it. Like if you're a creative person, which you probably are if you're listening or watching this, you can use your mind to think in different ways to create the best of any situation. It doesn't have to be what someone else has done before you. You have the power to choose your own path and make your own decisions about what you want to do and where you want to go. That's completely up to you. It's scary. I think that's the scariest thing, is taking that risk to do that. Once you do that, you're gonna feel so successful. You'll feel great. You'll feel fulfilled because you took your way and your thinking, and you're like, I did that. Like, I made this path for myself. I forged this from what I thought was nothing, of granules of hope, granules of blur in my life, and I made a sword. I cut through the tofu of life. I don't know. I don't know where tofu came from. I cut through something that was blocking me, and I'm going forward. I want to let everyone know who's watching this, who might feel particularly the world is on fire, which it is. So let's take it down a notch. Let's go back to the personal, because I'm not here to fix the world. The world is out of my control. Like the things on a large scale, quite honestly, out of my control. So let's go back to the individual. You do have the power to change things step by step. Don't think everything is going to change all at once. Don't think you can do it overnight. But don't think it's impossible, because there's certainly possibilities even within the impossible, or what you perceive to be impossible. People have done weird things. People have done strange things. People have done great things. Who's not to say it can't be you? Like, why not you? When we're talking about reframing, realigning, reassessing, redoing, what other re's do I have? I think we can do the same for achievement as we can for failure, in terms of like changing our perception of it. So achievement, if we're going to reframe it, we can think about looking at it as, achievement is not in the big moments. It's not in the huge externally validated successes. Achievement is not just winning an Oscar. Achievement is walking 10,000 steps when maybe yesterday you could only walk 10. It's in the personal progress. It's in the day-to-day. There's so many ways that you can feel a sense of achievement for yourself that doesn't necessarily need to be recognized by other people. But honestly, I feel like once you have that internal satisfaction and sense of achievement, other people will start to see that for you. They'll see how you made things better for yourself and feel happier, more joyous. So much to be said for just feeling fulfilled for yourself, just because. Just because. Not because something happened, not because you sold out whatever, product, whatever. There's so much to be said just for feeling good, just because. And that's an achievement, because there's so many reasons to not feel good. But achievement can be just getting up after you've fallen down. So my advice is to just, change the expectations for yourself. Change what you consider to be an achievement. Change what you consider to be a failure. They're just two sides of the same coin. It's just about what you perceive. And this is not to diminish any of your achievements. It's just to make sure that you're realigning with your internal values. Because I believe you can't fail or fail yourself if you just live within your values and live truthfully. Because if you're just being yourself, like, that's not, it's not failure. I think that's kind of where I want to end this episode. And yeah, my final thought, just going back to the beginning of thinking about my past self and would I change anything, and what I've just been talking about, like, it's all a massive journey. There's mountains, there's valleys, there's peaks, there's highs, there's lows, and we will just have to go with it and hopefully go with each other and have each other's backs and just be strong. I don't know. I don't have like a motivational quote to end on, but I'm hoping what I said for the past, you know, hour or so was enough. So I'm really, really grateful to you for watching or listening to Pensive Podcast. I will be taking a short break because, it's just me filming and editing all of these. And on top of that, I'm doing other YouTube videos, doing other projects and this kind of thing. I will be back with the podcast for sure. I'll have more guests. And yeah, so in the meantime, please follow the Substack. Please follow Instagram, YouTube. This is me trying to remember like what online sphere I'm occupying at the moment. YouTube, Instagram, Substack, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify for the podcast specifically. Yeah, please follow because I will be doing more offline kind of things, I'm hoping, in the very near future. So if you're based in London, I hope to see you around. And I'm happy that you're here. And if you're listening, you're an achievement in yourself. You're a walking achievement. You're a walking success. So thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.